Everything is Crab is one of those games that hooks you through its absurdity, an animal evolution roguelite where sooner or later, everything converges into crabs. It might seem like pure indie meme material, but after a few failed runs, you realize the mutation system and combat design offer much more depth than the premise suggests. If you have already moved past the initial learning phase and are looking for consistent results, these 10 advanced tips will completely change how you approach the game. I'm Mary, and the video starts now. If you have spent a few hours on this game, you probably understand that becoming a crab isn't just a thematic goal, it is literally what you are building toward in every run. Carcinization is the core of the progression system. The higher this level, the more crab-like you become. You get more powerful, more specialized, and more focused. Sounds great, right? Well, almost. The issue is that the game extracts a price for this. Every point of carcinization you stack increases the damage you receive from enemies. It's not a negligible number. In the late game stages, a boss can catch you off guard and take a massive chunk of your HP in a single hit, even if you are running with high health. It has happened to me. I thought I had built an invincible tank, only to be caught by a boss that decided I didn't deserve to continue. The reward, however, is tangible. With high carcinization, the rarity of food items that appear improves considerably, leading to more powerful builds and more interesting options along the path. It's a classic trade-off. Higher risk, higher reward. The game mechanics encourage aggressive play, but punish you if you neglect defense. Therefore, before stacking carcinization mindlessly, ensure your defense is keeping pace. Plating, size, and health regen are not optional in the late game. They are what keep your run alive while you reap the benefits of being the most evolved crab in the session. View these defensive attributes as the prerequisite for playing aggressively on offense. Without them, you are just a fragile crab waiting to be evaporated. It's not enough to just grab the flashiest mutations that appear. You need to build around an identity. Predator, prey, social, imposing, trickster. Each of these affinities is essentially a build path, and the game rewards those who commit to one. The underlying mechanic is simple but effective. The more you invest in a specific affinity, the higher the probability that rare evolutions of that same type will appear in your offerings. It is a self-reinforcing system. You choose Predator, start seeing more Predator options, pick them, and suddenly your build is cohesive, synergistic, and highly efficient. This is the kind of progression that explains why some runs just click, while others feel disorganized. If you're still figuring out which affinity to use as a starting point, Predator is the most consistent answer. Its focus on direct damage creates a more predictable and scalable playstyle, especially against bosses where constant offensive pressure is required. This isn't to say other affinities are weak. Trickster and Social have significant potential in the right hands, but Predator has fewer variables, which matters when you are still learning patterns. A common mistake is picking random mutations because they look good individually, without considering the affinity they represent. You end up with a Frankenstein build of evolutions that don't interact, making it difficult to scale in the late game. Choose an affinity early, maintain focus, and let the rarity system work in your favor. When your build starts to assemble itself, you'll understand the mechanical depth of the evolution system. If you haven't experimented with the revenge evolution at the legendary level, you are leaving one of the most effective combos on the table. On the surface, it seems like a reactive evolution. You take damage, you deal it back. Simple. But when you understand how it interacts with the rest of your build, it becomes extremely powerful. The secret lies in combining it with overwhelm and high plating. Overwhelm amplifies the damage of your auto attacks, and legendary level Revenge triggers those exact attacks every time you are hit. With enough plating to absorb the impact without dying, you essentially transform every hit received into a burst of return damage. We are talking about over 1,200 damage per activation in optimized builds, and against bosses with high attack frequencies, this becomes a passive destruction machine. What makes this combo particularly strong against bosses is their AI behavior. Roguelike bosses tend to have aggressive, repetitive attack patterns, which is usually a disadvantage for the player. This build inverts that logic. The more the boss hits you, the faster it dies. It feels almost unbalanced, which is exactly the sensation you want when a build truly comes together. The part that requires attention is the balance. You need enough plating to survive between activations, because without survivability, the combo doesn't have time to work. Don't try to force this in a run where your defense is weak, thinking the damage will compensate. It won't, especially in the final stages. But if you enter a boss fight with this combination functioning correctly, it will be one of your most satisfying runs. Most players immediately gravitate toward offensive builds. Predator, pure damage, clearing everything as fast as possible. It's intuitive. However, there is an affinity that many ignore, which can make runs significantly safer. Social, especially when combined with charm and courting. The central concept is powerful. Instead of killing everything, you convert them. Charming powerful enemies and turning them into allies means you are essentially recruiting the game's own army to fight for you. These pet crabs aren't just cosmetic. They tank damage, distract enemies, and actively contribute to encounters. With the gregarious affinity feeding the system, the quality and frequency of these allies increase considerably. This tactic truly shines during the night cycle. If you've played long enough to know how chaotic night encounters can be, you'll immediately see the value of having allies absorb pressure while you reposition. Instead of dealing with everything directly, you manage the battlefield from a distance, using your allies as shields and only engaging when necessary. It's a different playstyle and, honestly, more calculated. For those tired of runs failing due to a lack of defensive sustain, this build is one of the most viable alternatives. It's not the most explosive, and it won't give you that feeling of deleting a boss in seconds, but it will take you further with more consistency. Sometimes the smartest move isn't being the strongest in the room, it's convincing everyone else to fight for you. One of the most counterintuitive decisions you will make is looking at a legendary evolution glowing on your screen and deliberately ignoring it. It feels wrong, like a waste, but understanding when to decline a rare evolution is what separates average runs from those that actually reach the end. The problem with high-rarity evolutions, epic, gold, legendary, is that they lock the slot they occupy. When you take one, that space is committed to that specific direction, and the pool of future options begins to shape around it. If that evolution doesn't align with the affinity you are building, you have just placed an obstacle in your own path. The rarity of the item doesn't matter if it works against the cohesion of your build. Look at it this way. A common evolution that fits your current synergy perfectly will scale much better throughout the run than a legendary evolution that exists in isolation, without interacting with your other stats. The game rewards consistency and focus, not a collection of rare items. I have lost good runs by being greedy, seeing a gold item, taking it without thinking, and having it destroy the direction I had been building from the start. The advanced move is always to ask, does this serve what I am doing right now? If the answer is no, let it pass. It can be hard in the moment, especially when an item looks powerful in the abstract, but a cohesive build with well-chosen common evolutions will take you further than a random mix of rarities without synergy. Discipline in selection is just as important as luck in the offerings.
If you have reached the higher difficulties of this game and taken massive damage right at the start of a run, you know exactly what I'm talking about. In high pressure mode, enemies are brutal. They take huge chunks of your HP with very few hits. Without a solid survival base, the run ends before you can truly scale. This is where one of the most powerful strategies comes in, the max HP focus. The central evolution for this is Hump. What makes it so effective is this. Every time you consume healing food with full HP, it permanently stacks max HP. You essentially turn every meal into a tank upgrade. Over time, your health pool becomes so large that attacks that would normally kill your creature start to feel like a tickle. The community considers this broken for a reason. There is also a bonus many ignore. Max HP also scales the body slam attack significantly. There are records of players seeing this attack exceed 2,400 damage when Hump is combined with Forage. You aren't just a tank absorbing hits, you become a wrecking ball that uses its own weight as a weapon. Survival and damage in a single evolution. That is high-level synergy. However, execution requires discipline. You must learn to identify when your HP is full and only then consume the healing food. Eating at the wrong time wastes the stack. Keep an eye on your health bar at all times, position your creature near food clusters during combat, and prioritize picking Hump as soon as it appears. In high pressure mode, this evolution is often a necessity rather than a choice. Beginners often find a comfortable corner. Kill the enemies that appear, and stay there waiting for the run to evolve on its own. I understand the instinct. When the creature is functioning well, the last thing you want to do is take risks. But staying stationary is exactly what holds you back in higher difficulties. Points of interest, POIs, ruins, specific biomes, marked zones on the map are resources many ignore. This is a mistake because these points provide things you simply cannot get otherwise. Temporary buffs that amplify your attack, HP regeneration in critical moments, and even mutagen, which is one of the most valuable resources for truly scaling your creature. A single POI visited at the right time can completely turn around a run that seemed lost. What transforms a good run into an incredible one is map awareness. You need to keep track of where these points are, calculate the risk of moving toward them, and understand the right timing to do so. Sometimes it's worth crossing an enemy-filled area to grab a buff that doubles your damage for a while. Other times, the passive regeneration of a specific biome is what keeps you alive while Hump is still stacking HP. The practical tip is simple. Every time the map appears, don't just look at where the enemies are. Look at the POIs and plan a route that takes you to them without wasting time. Map awareness isn't just a detail for advanced players, it's the habit that separates those who clear high-pressure runs from those who stay stuck for hours. If you haven't paid attention to the game clock, you've likely died without understanding why. Night in Everything is Crab isn't just a visual change, it completely alters map behavior. Enemies become more aggressive, visibility drops, and the creature you thought was in control can suddenly be hit by enemies you didn't even see coming. Ignoring the cycle is a costly mistake at higher difficulties. Advanced strategy isn't about surviving the night by fighting harder, it's about stopping direct combat and starting to scavenge. Alphas, the larger and more brutal enemies scattered across the map, often leave behind combat remains that you can consume without having to face them head-on. During the night, while everything is more dangerous, these remains are a silent and safe source of power. You accumulate evolution without the risk of a direct confrontation with compromised visibility. Think of the cycle like this. Night is your time for collection and patience. Day is your time for active hunting. When the sun rises and visibility returns, you enter that new day with more resources, more stacked HP, and a creature one step ahead of where it was. This shift in mindset between day and night is what experienced players do naturally. In practice, when night falls, resist the urge to push through the map as if nothing has changed. Slow down, identify where the alphas are by the trail of destruction they leave, and capitalize on the remains of those fights. The sooner you internalize this rhythm, the fewer runs you will lose to nighttime damage from an angle you simply couldn't see. Not every boss is just an obstacle to knock down. Some of them literally change the map and the rules of the game after you face them. And if you aren't prepared for that change, a successful run can collapse in seconds. Bosses that offer branching evolutions require the most foresight, because the right decision needs to happen before the encounter, not after. The clearest example is the Aquaconda. This boss creates water in the environment, and flooded maps are a severe punishment for creatures without aquatic mobility. Your speed drops, you lose control over positioning, and manageable enemies start to corner you. The answer isn't to fight the map, it's to have wings or a mobility evolution that allows you to ignore the speed penalty entirely, whether by flying over the water or moving in a way that the flooding doesn't affect you. This system forces you to think about the run as a whole. When you see Aquaconda will appear as the next stage boss, the question isn't, how do I defeat this boss, but how will I survive the map it creates? Prioritizing a mobility evolution before this encounter, even if it isn't the strongest at that moment, is an investment that pays off immediately after. Keep an eye on the boss information whenever the game gives you that window. If you identify a terrain-altering boss, look for evolution options that neutralize that change. Wings, in particular, are one of the most versatile choices. They solve the Aquaconda problem and provide extra mobility for other scenarios. Adapting your creature to what the boss will do is the level of reading that separates top-tier players. There is a massive difference between a player who survives high difficulties and one who actually masters the game. And much of that difference has nothing to do with which evolution you picked. It has everything to do with where you are on the map at any given second. Positioning is an invisible mechanic the game never explicitly teaches, but once understood, every run feels more controlled. The arms evolution is a perfect example of depth hidden in simple upgrades. On paper, increasing feeding range seems like a quality of life buff. In practice, you're creating a safety zone around your creature. You can farm XP and collect resources without getting close to enemies, drastically reducing damage taken in high-risk situations. It is passive survival disguised as a utility upgrade. Furthermore, positioning becomes vital when facing bosses with charges, linear attacks that cover large distances quickly. The natural instinct is to run away in a straight line, but that is exactly how most players get hit. The correct movement is lateral, perpendicular to the attack. A sidestep instead of a retreat lets the boss pass right by you without contact, while you are already repositioned to counterattack. Practice this lateral dodge until it becomes automatic. At first, it feels counterintuitive. Your brain wants distance, not an angle. But once you internalize this movement, bosses that seemed impossible become manageable. Combine this with arms to maintain a safe distance between encounters, and you'll find you take less damage not because you got stronger, but because you stopped being in the wrong place at the wrong time.